Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, loin streamer, and today I am officially destroying my life with these 25 hot takes that will undoubtedly, at least one of them, feel personal to you. Who needs friends when I have hot takes to keep me warm? Now, with that said, before we get started, and I know it's been such a long time since we had my hot takes. The hot takes to keep you warm throughout the winter. They are so piping hot that they took out my eye. Like, these are the kinds of hot takes you do not carry without wearing goggles. Otherwise, this is what happens to you. Now, before we get into my hot takes, there are a couple of things. Number one, kind of redundant and stupid at this point, because clearly the hot takes will have the effect of the nastiest stench you have ever not smelt, because you would have died if you smelled something this bad from 50 feet away. But if you want to see my life go up in flames further, share, subscribe, like the content to see it burn more of my life as fuel. The second thing, if I have not socially pariahized myself enough and you would like to end up on this channel somehow, some way, possibly in mockery. I don't know. It depends on if I read your book, because there's a chance that there will be mockery if you've seen any of the reviews. But there are other ways outside of mockery to end up here. One of them is through Lemoy, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we don't mock what you do, we celebrate what you do, because nobody can theoretically do what you do, theoretically. The second way to be featured and not be mocked, at least by me, where I read your first chapter, provided here on the channel to anybody who wants to take a peek based on your cover, your title, your genre, and your sample may entice some readers to look at it. Maybe it's their favorite type of story they haven't read yet. Maybe it's their favorite type of cringe. You never know. All I can do is promise the exposure that whoever sees this channel has the chance to see your story too. The third thing doesn't even matter. But if you would like to cringe at the kind of stuff I create, you can find it anywhere you get books. With that said, it's time to get into the disaster that will fuel your heat all winter. Oh yeah, I should say most of these are going to be creative or book-related hot takes. Some of them are a little less so. Hot take number one. Marketing isn't for you. It's for the publisher to sell a book. If you don't see marketing at you or your interest, it means that the book companies are not actively trying to manipulate you into buying product. Hype is there to sell stuff, not to actually fulfill what you imagine to be good. 1B. Hype can also never be met. No matter how much you are excited for something, your imagination will always be better than whatever the payout is, because your imagination is unfathomable. A product is finite. And so if you hype something up, the feelings that you imagined will always be higher than what is ever delivered. 2. Talking about something gives it life. I talk about things that I don't enjoy on this channel in order to give them a chance at life, which is why I talk about characters or books, even if I don't like them, and often somewhat treat them like they are alive by criticizing them or talking about them within the context of the book. Talking about characters or stories allows them to live in reality. It sort of transfers them over from where they exist in the book. Often, if it is an indie thing where only 1, 2, maybe 10 people know about it, now you get to bring it and it gets to live among the heads of everybody who hears about it. So speaking on things does give it life, and it's a very important part of sharing creative content that you either like or want to see or want other people to find. So even if you don't like something and you talk about it, you're still giving it a chance to live, which has resulted in one of the hot takes that is on the later part of this list. Also, for the record, just to hype you up, as I just talked about hype, my hottest hot take of all will be at the end of this video, so stay tuned if you want to see the hot take of all hot takes. 3. If you can't write tension or suspense without it revolving around your character being horny, then you can't write tension or suspense. Constantly sustaining everything with I want to bang him, I want to bang him, I want to bang him so bad, and then setting up arbitrary reasons as to why she is not banging him is not creating suspense or tension. It's just you being horny and edging your audience. 4. Most books don't need to be over 500 pages. While there are plenty that can justify their length and absolutely do, there are many that don't. In fact, most that don't, especially if they are your debut novel. Personally, if I see a new writer or a self published writer who goes over 500 pages, especially early on, I doubt their ability to tell a story. Now, I will give it a chance, but especially when you go near 800 or more pages, I question your ability to be able to tell a story and especially to effectively edit and cut a story. I've seen far too many indie authors say that their favorite thing about indie is they don't have to cut anything. And so who cares if this scene or that scene is completely useless? It makes them feel better. That's fine if you love it that way. I will judge it that way as a consumer. I know that you love your characters. If I don't love your characters the same way you do, well, that's how it goes, and that's how we all deal. Sorry if that's cold. But even some of the greats, long books, like Stephen King, like Dan Simmons, like Clive Barker, could probably have cut sections of their books. Different people say so. I think that The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis was probably at least 20% longer than it needed to be, at least for my enjoyment, and I almost quit a couple of times. The last one third of the book was fine, but I didn't think it needed to be as long as it did. 5. Protagonists slash heroes can have flaws, and villains slash hero coding is pathetic. I hate when I pick up a book and it has this character likes Nazis and World War II. This character is a racist, which obviously means that that is a bad person. This person likes Rush Limbaugh, so that means that they are obviously a bad person. This person has a domestic violence shelter. So, despite how she treats any of the people in her relationships, she is obviously a good person. Ignore all of her habits. This person over here loves kittens, raises kittens. So, that's good guy coding. This person over here, everybody who is a stank eye master hates them. So, that's good guy coding because they are all stank masters. And you know, if the stank masters hate you, then you are on the good side. Villain slash hero coding is lazy. It is cliche and it is filled with tropes. You can actually have heroes that have the less attractive interests, tropes, or flaws, and you can have villains that do the opposite thing without it being some sort of attempt at morally gray because people are complicated. 6. Someone can repeat advice but not be able to enact it. This happens very common with people that give their opinions on whatever and then try to do whatever. I know, it doesn't mean anything coming from me. I already accept that. Don't listen to my advice. My opinions are garbage. That's why I'm burning my life down right now. But people can identify what they do not like or what they think isn't great and not be able to write it themselves. Because audience members who haven't even studied an art form can recognize what they do like or what they don't like without having studied it. However, in order to enact something, in order to deploy something, it takes thousands upon thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours and practice and studying to do. And so you may be able to identify what you like or don't like in something without being able to effectively do it yourself. That's normal. That's fine. Regular audience members know what they like and know what they don't like without being able to create it themselves. 7. Stories don't have to teach the audience anything. Stories can just be about an adventure. They can just be a love story. They can just be whatever they want to be, and they don't need some hidden lesson. They don't need some theme. They don't need anything deeper. And it doesn't make it better if you're trying to teach the audience something. In fact, you can have your themes, and they are absolutely wonderful. I love thematic things. I love things that explore psychology. However, if you approach your writing project as an educational tool for the audience, then that reads condescending. The only difference to that for me is if it is for a younger audience and if the book is specifically meant to teach that, as opposed to having just a story of friendship that goes through, and then there are deeper themes to find if the reader wants to find them. 8. Stories lacking character arcs are pointless to me. Now, it's okay if you don't like character arcs, if you don't like to see flawed characters go through something and either get better or worse. Those are not everybody's bag, just as flawless characters are not everybody's bag. But for me personally, and it is a personal taste, I don't really have an interest in things like James Bond, Indiana Jones, stuff like the Cripple Squad, where you just start off high and you start off perfect and you're perfect all the way through because there's no struggle, you see no choices that mean anything, and the character is going to win at the end. And if that's all that you want in a story is to see a character do something cool and to be awesome all the way through, that is a specific genre, and I'm glad you have that. But for me, they're pointless and I'm not a fan. But I don't think that a flawed character going through something makes it a weaker story. And I don't think a character who is great at everything and flawless and just goes on an adventure makes it a weaker story. I think that they are different stories for different purposes. And I've seen a number of people treat flawed characters as if it's a personal insult because they identify with the character in superficial ways and they see the character as less than perfect and then take it as an insult upon themselves. Because what they want is a self insert OP character who is the coolest ever. And if that's for you, great. But character arc stories are not a personal insult. It's okay. You can like what you like, girl. 9. Not every story is for every person. This goes with the last one. Just because a story exists, a story is popular, doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to fall into the audience of that story. And just because a story is not interesting to you, it does not feed your preferences, does not mean that there are not stories out there. There are stories that do defy the genre and bring people in who don't normally consume that genre, and then there are stories that feed mostly the readers of that genre or the consumers of that genre, and everybody else really doesn't matter unless it tickles your pickle for one reason or another. But every story is not for every person. This includes genre, age category, trope usage, anything. I assume from the very beginning that my stories are specifically for the most niche audience in existence, me. They make me happy. I like my characters. I don't expect anybody to like anything that I do, especially because I hear a lot of people all of the time insulting first person and present tense, and I love writing and reading in first person and present tense. Not everything I do is first person present, but I do like it a lot. And so I recognize that my choices are very niche. I also recognize that I don't like a lot of what is popular, like ACOTAR, like Fourth Wing, like Lord of the Rings, like anything that has to do with superheroes. And so my taste is very niche. You know, I'm going to give a school shooter fiction higher regards than anything in Marvel and DC, and I understand that that is very niche, and that's fine. Not everything is for everybody, and that doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion or you shouldn't have an opinion just because it's not for you. But if you go into a Barbie movie and you know that you freaking hate Barbie, recognize that you're not the target audience for it. That'll help. So it's not specifically at you that it sucks. I didn't like Amygdala because I'm not the kind of person that likes to fuck headless people and then put the heads back on them. I'm not the kind of person that gets a lot of enjoyment out of constantly describing how thick the thighs and the belly are. Just because a book exists, a story exists, doesn't mean that it is for every person, and that's okay. It's okay to have an opinion, be an outlier. It is also okay to not like what everybody else likes. There is nothing wrong with you for having a different opinion, for just disliking something. Everything is fine. 10. You don't need a good reason to like or dislike something. I see this a lot when it comes to discussions about books or movies or video games, or even with indie authors who are demanding reviews from reviewers or are unhappy with the reviews that they got because they're just like, I didn't like this. And they demand that reviewers leave good reasons for why they didn't like something. Or if you say that you like something, maybe even something questionable, maybe even something weird, like if I say I like Model Land, if I say I like Empress Teresa, you don't need a thesis level reason for any of your interests. You don't need to defend pretty much most of your interests. Now, I'm not going to go into that with any of this really fringe stuff that borders on criminality. I'm not going to say anything about paraphilias. We're just talking about regular interests here. And even with your paraphilias, you don't have to explain them to anybody. Probably don't unless invited to. But there are a lot of situations, it feels like, where people are mocked if they don't have a good reason for liking something or disliking something. They are interrogated for liking something or disliking something. This comes up often for me when I say that I am not a fan of general fantasy. That's not to say I won't find a niche fantasy subgenre stories that I am interested in, but most of the time in the past, I have had issues where I've said I don't like fantasy, and I have been interrogated because I needed a good reason to dislike fantasy. I have said I'm not a fan of dragons, and I've needed to defend myself on why I'm not a fan of dragons. And you don't need any good reason for liking or disliking something. Sometimes it's just an aesthetic, sometimes it's just an affinity, sometimes you don't even know. You just like it. And that's fine. Love what you love, girl. 11. Some people are too personally invested. They actively discourage readers by threatening to denigrate them as a person for having a critical opinion. If that's you, your work deserves to fail. So I've seen in critical review spaces or book discussion spaces or even television and video game spaces that people rely on the majority opinion for where to put their opinion. And they only speak when they believe that they are safe to speak because they agree with the majority opinion. And when they find that they disagree with the majority opinion, they don't know what to do and back off. But if they are the majority opinion and someone comes in with a minority opinion, I've often seen ganging up on the minority opinion person to try to beat them into submission or chase them out. If you don't accept other people having their opinions that are different and instead believe that they should be threatened or denigrated for having a critical opinion of whatever work, I think your work deserves to fail. If you can just have a good time and accept that other people have different opinions on things, awesome. I hope you have a lot of success. 12. You are allowed to have a bad project or multiple bad projects and fail, and then not be a failure for the rest of forever. I've seen this opinion kind of jump around, which is looking at somebody, and you can look at somebody's historical context of like what their projects in the past look like to kind of gauge if you'll like something in the future. But I think looking at somebody going, I thought that project was garbage, that project was garbage, that other project was garbage, so clearly everything that they will ever do is garbage, is kind of insulting to not just them, but it's also dooming yourself if you're a creative, because it says if you've ever had at least one failed project, if maybe your first project was even a learning curve, then you can never be better than your first project or your worst project. And everybody who creates anything has highs and lows in their career, and that is fine. It is okay to fail, and we learn from our failures, and some of our stories, some of our ideas are more niche, and that's also fine, and it will only appeal to smaller groups of people, and that's fine. The funny thing is, no matter how niche and small our ideas will be, they will still never be as popular as the niche idea of haunting Adeline. That's depressing. Just know, no matter how any of your projects perform, you are never doomed to be stuck at your worst project. And I believe that wholeheartedly. 13. There is no objective rulebook for good storytelling that will avoid all criticism. I see people trying to jump into creative writing a lot, looking for the specific rule books, whether it's following advice of gurus, whether it's reading all of the writing craft books, whether it's going to their favorite critiquers in existence for different forms of media, and trying to get the idea of what makes a story objectively good. I've also been pulled into conversations about what makes an objectively good story, and you can talk about, is the grammar correct? Does this follow technical whatever? Does this follow technical procedure? Yes. Does this have a main character? That is an objective question. Yes. Is the main character objectively good? That's going to be an actual subjective question because it depends on personal interpretation of context. If you look at many of the book reviews here on this channel, even in the conversations down below between different people who have read a book, there are different interpretations on the content. And so a character can even say, I'm a good person, and it depends on if you trust that person's word or don't trust that person's word. You're going to get a very different story. And this is something that I have recognized as a very big difference between how I read books and how other people read books, and where we kind of run into talking past each other about the same thing is If you approach a book and by default accept what the book tells you, you're going to have a very different experience than what I do, which is I distrust a book from the start. I need the book to prove to me that it is trustworthy. And so I analyze the contents and the characters in the book, and the author, the narrator of the book, has to build rapport with me before I trust what it tells me. Are the characters doing what they're saying they're going to do? Are the characters presenting themselves in scenarios as the same people that they are telling me through narrative that they are? And if not, I'm going to question things. Does it feel like things are being left out on purpose or by accident that then changes the storytelling? I'm going to notice that. And so that will change things. Now, even by following all of the most objective rules, like have a plot arc, have a character arc, because of that objective interaction with a book, and it goes with some of the stuff I said previously about what you like is going to be subjective, is going to be specific to you, there is no way to objectively write a book that will never receive criticism, because everybody's got different tastes. Are you going to write for optimum world building? Are you going to write for optimum dialogue? Are you going to write for optimum realism? Are you going to write for character? Are you going to write for mythology? It matters a lot. And you might think that you can do all of it at once, but you can't. Because I can tell you, stories that generally focus on the world building and the plot driven stuff lose me. I'm going to be more critical of those because I'm going to be bored of those. If you have characters that make decisions that don't make sense because you're pushing a plot-driven story, I'm going to have more issues with that. But somebody who just follows the plot and likes to just see the plot go forward are going to have less issue with that. So it really is always going to depend on your reader, which is why it's important to get your book to your ideal reader and not just to random readers if you want to have a good response. There is no cheat code, shortcut to writing a book that will never get criticism. The only way to avoid getting any criticism is to only put the book forward to people that can assure you they will say great things, and then pressure everybody into saying good things and bully the people that say bad things. Because every book will have at least one person that doesn't like it. There is no way around it, and you're not a lesser person for receiving criticism. It's fine. Just accept that there is no way to cheat your way to a good book that will never be criticized, and somehow you're at the top, especially not your first book, boyo. 14. You can't be successful today if you hate modern audiences. I'm not talking about the meme for modern audience value writing. I'm talking about if you openly despise all creative projects of today and all audiences because you think you know better, then I find it hard to believe that you will be successful. I have had more than a couple of conversations or been privy to conversations of people telling me that they think everything right now sucks. Modern audiences suck. Modern audiences are stupid, but somehow they are going to create the messiah of all creative projects, and it will blow every other project out of the water, despite the fact that they think that modern audiences are dumb. If you hate modern society, if you hate your peers, if you hate everybody else living today, I don't think that there is a way for you to create a banger project. Because I think it requires actually knowing and caring about the audience, actually wanting to pass something into the world that has value and has meaning and is not just about making a name for yourself. And if you can't empathize, if you can't connect with modern audiences, any sort of modern audiences, because there are millions of different types of people, billions of different types of people, in fact, if you can't even bring yourself to think that there are some worthy people out there that you would like to have in your audience, I don't see how you can speak to anybody but yourself. And maybe that's your goal, which is also fine. 15. Clinging to old tropes and stories while refusing to explore anything new limits your creative capacity and is generally closed-minded. That's not saying that you have to do anything that you don't want to do. Creating projects are all about creating the kinds of stories and expressions that you want to see more of as a creative. However, if you rely only on old tropes and stories that have already been told and then just doing a new version of it that is exactly the same because old tropes are tried and true, then it implies that everything good has already been done, and anything now can only be a ripoff or a counterfeit, and it's mediocre at best because it's all remakes. Another implication is that genius or new stories can never be good, and that includes your work. New work, new exploration, new versions of art includes your expression, your take on things. And in order to defy the idea that everything modern is mediocre, then you have to accept the idea that old tropes can be played with in new ways and stories can be played with in new ways, and it can be exciting. That's also not saying that every time something is played with, it's going to turn out well. Creativity has a failure rate in it, which is one of the things that makes it so scary and so difficult. You never really know how it's going to turn out. But personally, I think clinging to old tropes and stories and refusing any changes or refusing to be playful or inquisitive is going to limit your creative capacity, and you're always going to end up with a mediocre remake or ripoff of something that was much better because that's what you said you believe in. 16. If you think that everyone else's work is garbage trash, it's likely that your work is garbage trash. This is kind of going on a theme. Thinking that you are the modern messiah of the failed entertainment industry is just egotism. But that confidence is amazing, and I do wish that I also had it. I don't think that I am better than my peers. In fact, like I said, I'm a niche product. I am burning my life down as we speak. But I wish I had the confidence of somebody who believed that my work was going to change the entire creative industry, the entire failed entertainment industry, despite being some no name that has zero connections and hasn't even read a book in the last 10 years. That's not a specific example, no. 17. Who asked for this is a criticism 17. Who asked for this is criticism antithetical to the age-old phrase, write what you want to see more of. I can't make anybody like my work. I also can't make myself create anything that I don't want to create, that I have no interest in creating. If you've ever studied any of the sciences, I'm sure that you possibly read a paper somewhere, an introduction to how research is done, that talks about how people pick research topics that they are interested in because they're going to be spending a lot of time doing that research for that project. And so it's typically all done by people who have a special interest in a certain thing. So if you see projects that are written in a certain way or research that is done in a certain way, it's because those people believe in that thing. And so they said, I want to research this and set off to research that thing. If you see a lack of research in that direction, it could be a suppression of that information. It could also be a lack of people in the field that are wishing to pursue that thing. If you say, I don't believe in telling this type of story, I don't believe in writing this kind of story, it can also just be that because you're not pursuing, it's not going to be out there. When it comes to the works that I have, and even the stuff that I'm passionate about, I get wishy-washy about. Like, I'm having a very difficult time right now. If it's not very obvious with my current disposition, I'm having a very difficult time deciding what I want to do and what I want to focus on because everything just seems absolutely worthless. So even the projects that I'm excited about also feel like trash at the same time. I can only make myself passionate about the things that I actually care about. I can only want to share things that I actually want to share, which is why I get excited talking about my characters, because I genuinely do love my characters. And once I do that, you are entirely open to judge them for the trash that they are, but they are my hot trash, okay? It's insane to me to see other creatives doing this exact thing, which is pursuing the creativity and the storytelling and the types of stories that they want to tell and saying, I will defy all of the critics telling me that I'm not allowed to do this, while then going out there and demanding that other creatives make things to their made to order instead of just allowing other creatives to do their creative project and then judging it when it comes out. There is so much attempted control and has been attempted control over individual creatives and the creative process since I have been old enough to be telling this stuff going on. And it's not in any specific direction. It's just happening all of the time. And personally, I've been confronted with people trying to control my creativity. I know other people who have been confronted and attempted commandeering to them and their abilities to create in a certain direction. I have seen threats. I have seen cancel culture in multiple directions. I have seen people trying to destroy other people for not making the creative decisions that they wished that they would make, that they didn't, it wasn't just wish, never mind. It was demanding that they make as if they were in charge. And then when I used creative tyranny, I had somebody talking to me like I was a Nazi. Isn't that funny? When all I'm asking, it's the funniest thing to be called a Nazi for saying, hey, Can you step off and let me create what I want to create? Can you step off and let them over there create what they want to create? And you can judge it once it's out. You can judge it once I ask your opinion for it if you're in my creative group, but you don't have any control over what I'm making. Is it too much to ask for that? Somehow saying you don't have control over me makes me the creative Nazi? Somehow saying you don't have control over me makes me the Nazi. Saying you don't have control over that guy over there makes me the Nazi. It's crazy. I might have harsh words for certain books, and I might have outlandish opinions. I might have very harsh opinions about things. I don't actually think I'm that harsh. I just think I'm straightforward, but that's a judgment for other people to make. However, it's my consumer response. I'm 100% talking about anything I say has nothing to do with any objective quality of anything that I say. And I think that if I cover any subject, any books, any stories, any movies, anything that I didn't like, that sounded interesting to you, I hope you check them out. Because I think different stories deserve to live with the people that love them, that will love them. And I think that I will live with the stories that affect me. And I will obviously still live with the stories that I've read that I didn't like because I think about them still. How many years is it now since his name is Augustine? And I still think about it. I mean, C.L. Carhart did that number on me. But all of my opinions, all of my responses are 100% mine and consumer responses. And I separate that from my professional responses. And my professional responses happen in crit group when somebody asks me to critique their book for their skill level, as opposed to if I'm critiquing it as a consumer. However, if something is still in production and you're not part of the creative team, you're not part of the creative team. And there is such an entitlement to creative people. It is wild to watch. 18. Anything can be twisted into a positive or a negative light based on the viewer's interpretation. Something existing doesn't mean that it's an attack on you, but that seems to be an idea that's been lost on many people, captured by the value of victimhood ideology. If you're being suppressed artificially, then any behind this is the idea that if you're being suppressed artificially, then any failure isn't your fault. If someone doesn't like your book, then it's because of sexism, racism, homophobia, bigotry, blah, 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 not because they just didn't like your book or it was just poorly received or it was poorly crafted or anything like that. There is a lot of this going on, and I see it also with people who identify specifically with whatever it is they're saying as being demonized. I've seen somebody say that redheads are specifically demonized and they have two stereotypes, whereas it's like I thought blonde girls were often considered the bad girl. Like Regina George is blonde, Caddy in Mean Girls is a redhead, but often it's the blonde that's the dumb bimbo hottie McHotface or the hot stupid or the hot bitch. But she can also be the super virginal like heroine that is the ideal beauty. There are stereotypes for everybody. So if you focus only on the ones where you go, well, no, it's redheads who are always just evil and ugly and the bad guys, or it's always fat people who are evil, ugly, or the bad guys or the butt of a joke. I'm pretty sure most butts of jokes are not actually fat, but if you focus on the things that you identify with when they are the things that are being mocked, then you're going to only notice those. It's kind of like when you get a Mini Cooper. I say Mini Cooper because I have one. And then you start noticing how many other Mini Coopers there are. It's because your focus has shifted. Now, that's not saying that there are not times in which people are focused on, but I think that there is too much focus on victim ideology that I hear everyone and their mother claiming victim ideology and bigotry when I'm like, I see what you're complaining about everywhere. It's going to be okay. And then they don't listen because they're halfway hysterical. 19. The creator or creators of a project are in control of said project. You can only pilot your response as the audience. You can only pilot your response as an audience. This kind of goes back to the other one where the creator is the one doing what they feel like they want to do, using their creative vision. If they reach out to say, hey, I'm looking for ideas, you can do that. But until the item is thrown out to the audience, it's none of your business what is done with it. In fact, at this point, I think that Sony made a mistake by changing Sonic's appearance to the audience, because I've seen many more audiences trying to control creative projects or get them canceled before release if they can't control them. And it's frankly disheartening and disgusting and frightening, actually. It makes me kind of sick, the kind of vitriol I've seen. 20. You have to be fearless to be a creator. You have to make what you want to see more of. Okay, I'm not even playing around here. If you want to see it out there, you have to make it. You have to produce it. You have to believe in it more than anybody else. Because if you don't believe in your own story, if you don't think that it is worth somebody else's time, let alone their money, if you decide that you're going to charge for it, if you don't think that it's worth if you don't think that it's worth anybody's money, let alone their time, so that they should donate their time to you, their limited, finite time on this planet to reading your story, then why should anybody read your story? You have to be the biggest advocate, the biggest fan of your own work. I can tell you what doesn't sell me on a story. When somebody plays a pity party for themselves and goes, no, it's a piece of trash. And I know that I've said mine is very specific in this video. That's because I know that my books are very specific, okay? I think my books are great. I love my books. I love my characters. I just recognize that I write a niche, okay? But I will talk about my love for them all the time. However, if you think that everything that you do is absolute garbage, that is not a sales pitch to me. That is an anti-sales pitch to me. This is an empowering moment right here, okay? And it's probably not actually as empowering as I say it is, but if you want to see something made, then you have to do it regardless of audience responses. No more of well, they're gonna hate me. Bro, do you know how much heat that I take just presenting questions on this channel that are meant to spark conversation? And then I get accusations thrown at me for asking questions, for having conversation. I get people taking the worst versions of what I say. And I think I'm being pretty reasonable. Of course I do. I'm biased, obviously. However, you have to make the things that you want to see. Forget the consequences. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people who are not even in their first project or barely in their first project or who aren't even revising their first project, worrying about what the audience is already going to say, worrying about being called bigots, worrying about being canceled, worrying about that. If you want to make it, you have to make it. Oh, and the conversation piece of, well, you couldn't make Tropic Thunder today. You couldn't make Blazing Saddles today. Did you know that those movies were self-produced? Were acted, written in, and produced by the same people? So the only difference between those and you and me as indies, if you are in fact an indie, is budget. If you want to do the artsy, creative projects, like The Shapes of Water, you have to advocate for it. Nobody asked for it, but you asked for it. Make it happen. Be fearless. You can do it. I believe in you. Regardless of the audience response, creators should only listen to feedback or advice that you find legitimately helps your project in the direction that you want to go. Because if you throw your stuff out there for any sort of feedback, you're going to get biased stuff that may be against your very wishes because they don't like the direction you're going in. They don't like your base themes. They don't like your characters. They want you to make everything sexual when that's not your goal. So only listen to whatever feedback you think helps your project get it closer to what it is supposed to be. And it is okay to ignore feedback that doesn't make sense to your goal. 21. Reactionary cancel culture is sometimes to blame when you ask, why is there nothing new out there anymore? Why is there nothing good out there anymore? Especially when the marketing of said reactionary either says this is catering to a specific audience, so that audience goes to it specifically to support the ideology, or it's because somebody loves being angry, and so then that puts the money in the pocket. Look at how much attention Velma got because of hate watching, and so it got a season 2. So reactionaries and hate watchers, specifically for the point of hate watching, still makes money and encourages stuff to be made for that reason, because it still provides press, it still provides income. And you discourage risk-taking by not giving chances to risk-takers, to new ideas, or to new properties, because it doesn't look like you can either hate on them or consider them to be catering to a specific audience. 22. You are not the only person having a hard time finding anything to read or that you enjoy. Most people don't share when they do not finish a book or hate a book. And most of my reviews are critical. if you haven't noticed, because it's a lot harder. In fact, sometimes I wonder if I even remember how to enjoy a book, if I even can enjoy a book, if I even enjoy reading or characters, or if I'm just like completely mentally broken, which, yes, but also, can I read? And then I find books that I enjoy, like My Dark Vanessa, and We Need to Talk About Kevin and Mary Sue, and I go, oh, I can enjoy things. These other books just don't tickle the pickle. And by pickle, I don't mean dragon. I also don't mean penis. 23. At this point, I feel like a bad person sometimes for the things that I read and talking about books. And I'm either hurting the author's feelings, having my characters, because there are multiple reasons for this. One, I'm either hurting the author's feelings for having opinions, I'm having my character denigrated for having an opinion, or I'm sharing a popular, really bad book that is making everybody else depressed because this is super popular, and instead of focusing on the other 4.5 to 5 million books published every year, the focus is on this one, and then it's making people depressed because they're like, this got published, this is popular, we're all doomed because look at this garbage. 4.5 million to 5 million other books. It's going to be fine. But I feel like I ruin other people's lives just by talking about books, whether it's a personal insult, whether it's an insult to me, and I go, why am I even talking about this? Because of course I needed another stack of insults lobbed at me for talking about fictional characters. Or I make people feel bad about their future prospects, or if they're alone in the world, or whatever. And is there even a point to talking about books anymore? Again, we're back to the freaking victimhood. You're right. There is nothing in the universe made for you or me, and I'm just adding to that belief by ever talking to anything about anything ever. Even this video isn't made for you. Dang it. 24. People don't try to understand others as much as they try to make you feel bad and control you into agreement with them. I have noticed, and it's very depressing. I'm going to try not to cry. It's okay. I've lost all desire, all ability to cry because I buried my humanity in the yard. I just can't anymore. But I've noticed, especially in some of my more controversial videos and some of my more controversial questions, when I ask questions, when I try to present a topic, the response is not to try to understand each other. You can't even have a conversation. It's everybody is prepared, and I know infinitives are always wrong. Most people, it seems, who engage in this stuff are always ready to assume that you are trying to trap them instead of having an honest conversation. Rather than exchanging perspectives, somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong. You can't both apparently be coming at it with best intentions and then trying to understand each other and understand that you are approaching it with different concerns in a different way for different reasons. But you both want for the better. You both have the same end goal. You just see it differently. Instead, it's an attempt to shame you, to name call you, to slur you into silence, to control you into silence, to make you back off, to join their side by making you feel bad, by making you think that you are bad, by denigrating, insulting, libeling your character instead of actually trying to understand you. It is impossible to try to understand. And in that way, and I know I'm going to mention we need to talk about Kevin again, but in that way, Lionel Shriver showed more compassion, understanding, and patience to somebody like Kevin than I see in regular conversations / dialogues among regular people. It's very disheartening. But you know what? #25. My most controversial hot take. If none of you hate me, if you don't hate me already by one of the previous hot takes, this one will keep you warm all winter long. Maybe the source of nuclear heat issues. I think I hear the Secret Service knocking on my door right now. National security is banging on my door right now for this uranium level nuclear explosion heat from the hot take. I hate Spider-Man. I cannot stand Spider-Man. I cannot stand how much Spider-Man is thrown into my face all the time, and I have Spider-Man trauma. Not even joking about that. I used to work with somebody who was so obsessed with Spider-Man. Every conversation that he had, it was about Spider-Man, almost 8 hours a day about Spider-Man. And we had an open office situation going on, and I got reported to HR for not talking to him enough about Spider-Man and focusing too much on my work. Not even a joke. So I have no idea why everybody is obsessed with Spider-Man. I hate Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire gets a pass because Tobey Maguire is a dork. But I hate Spider-Man. With that said, those are my hot takes. Welcome to the hate stack, I'm sure. I hope they keep you warm this winter. If you have any hot takes that you would like to share, let's keep the heat going. Let's rip a new hole in the ozone layer with the heat in the comments. Good luck. Die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out? The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him. Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?